I'm actually concerned about how close it sounds to my $300 microphone. So I'm assuming you've clicked on this video because you're looking for an answer to a very specific question. Now, I've been making content for a while now, and I'd probably say most weeks I get the question, "Hey Winter, what would you recommend as a starter microphone?" Whether that be for making content, live streaming, or just making it so that your teammates aren't hearing the clickety-clacks of your mouse and keyboard. Well, look no further, as I might have just found the exact microphone that you're looking for, and it's got some pretty crazy features for the price point. My name is BigWynter, and let's take a look at the AM8 Fifine microphone. Now, full disclaimer here for transparency, I was sent a copy of this microphone by Fifine to review. Although this is my full and honest opinion, I've spent the last week on and off stream using this, and Fifine don't get to preview this video before it goes live. And with that said, let's take a look at why I think this might be the starter microphone of choice. So let's lay the groundwork here before I dive into some more of the specifics. Firstly, what is it that I consider a starter microphone? I would always say when it comes to content creation, audio is never something you should skimp out on. Viewers will always care more about good quality audio over visuals, and we have the data to back that one up. Now, a starter dedicated microphone is anything that is going to be a step up in audio quality over something like a headset microphone, but isn't going to break the bank. So let's just say anything under $100 is considered that range for a starter microphone. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at everything that comes in the box before we take a listen. Inside the box, we had the user manual and the base stand for the microphone, which is actually surprisingly weighty, although my recommendation would always be to get your microphone off the desk to isolate your voice away from the background noise as much as possible. We then of course had the microphone itself, as well as a 2-meter USB-A to C cable, where the A connection is to your PC or PlayStation and the C is into the back of the microphone. And whilst this microphone is an XLR microphone, it doesn't come with an XLR microphone in the box, and for the purposes of this review, we're just going to be looking at the USB plug and play side of things. Now for the mic itself, it's got a USB-C port, a headphone jack for pass-through and monitoring, and the XLR mic port on the bottom. It also features 2 dials for gain and your headphone monitoring, as well as capacitive touch buttons to change the various RGB profiles or turn them off entirely, as well as a hard mute button for the microphone. The monitoring, mute, and RGB will only work via the USB side of things, and the mixer will be the one that's handling the monitoring, the muting when you're using it via XLR. Aesthetically, I think it's got a fairly unique and blocky appearance, which I actually like, and the phone covering has this strangely velvety texture to it, and mine seemed to have a couple of dents and divots before making its way to me, but nothing too major. And as gamers, we of course love us some good RGB, and here we've got 2 dynamic modes and 8 solid colors, so plenty of choice, and the mute indicator is plenty bright and visible. One thing that I did note is that the mounting bracket for the mic is quite large to facilitate it rotating in whatever direction you want. However, once you plug it in, you can't actually spin it as the cable that comes in the box gets caught, but this is easily rectified with a flush cable that I ended up swapping it out for. Plus, I noticed that the tightening screws on the mounting bracket did allow the mic to move around quite freely, even when fully tightened, but it's not a big deal if you're not planning on moving the mic around too much. But if you are somebody that's super animated on stream and you're pulling the mic around, it's probably going to wobble around a bit. In terms of the build quality for the microphone itself, it is made of a plastic housing, which doesn't have the most expensive feel to things, but for a microphone in this price range, I would rather have something that sounds great and looks nice than feels nice and weighty in that hand. But do bear that weight in mind if you have a spring-loaded boom arm. The mic is pretty light and you might need a counterweight for it. But importantly, this is a mic review, so let's see how it actually sounds. Hello, my name is BigWynter and I'm a gaming content creator and live streamer. You are currently listening to the AM8 microphone with no plugins, VSTs, straight out the box. Hello, my name is BigWynter and I'm a gaming content creator and live streamer. You are currently listening to the AM8 microphone with plugins and EQ. Hello, my name is BigWynter and I'm a gaming content creator and live streamer. You are currently listening to my daily driver, the $300 Beacon microphone. Now, fresh out of the box, I think it actually has a fairly natural sound, and I was genuinely pretty damn impressed for a mic in that $50 to $60 range. I think it does lack a little bit of that boom that you'd expect to hear in much higher end microphones, but the mids and highs actually sound really damn good. Not too muddy or echoey like you'd expect from a much cheaper microphone, and none of that crazy overpowering high that you'd expect from a typical headset microphone. With it being a dynamic microphone with a cardioid pattern to it, the sound isolation in your direction is actually really good, and the surrounding noise is much quieter, although technically still there, or at least in the 70% gain range that I have it set to right now. Now, personally, I really like a mix of that velvety, bassy radio sound with some of the more natural tones to the voice. And with just a little tinkering, I managed to get that sound, and I was really happy with things. Now, to get the sound that you're listening to right now, there are 7 things that I did that I typically recommend with most microphones anyway. Number 1, get it off the desk, get it on a boom arm, drum, get it away from the surrounding noise. Number 2 is to get it roughly 2 to 6 inches from your mouth. I've got it about 4 inches away right now on that 70% gain, but if you wanted to turn that gain down and get a more radio smooth feel, you could get it even closer. I then added noise suppression, a noise gate, a compressor, a limiter, and some fairly gentle EQ. When it comes to these adjustments, these could be applied in some audio software like Voicemeeter, or you can plug them directly into OBS. Obviously, if you do go down the OBS route, these adjustments are not going to be available for things like Discord and your in-game chats, but Discord's got its own noise suppression and gate system anyway, so it's not really a big deal. Now, I don't think you really need to do any of this with this microphone in particular, but if you wanted to get us sounding as good as you possibly can, let me walk you through those steps in real time. So when it comes to noise suppression, you could use something like NVIDIA Broadcast if you've got an NVIDIA card, or you can hop right into OBS here and use the baked-in feature in here. So I'll toggle on noise suppression here. I've chosen RN noise. It's a bit of better quality. It uses a bit more CPU, but use whichever one sounds best, or uses the least amount of resources, whichever's important to you. Do bear in mind though that whenever you use noise suppression, it is going to take some of the frequencies out of your voice and the mic signal, so you might need to add some of this back in with EQ later, which I'll touch on in a second. The next thing that I added in was that noise gate. The reason we want this is because certain things we don't want being picked up by the microphone. If you look at the mic signal right now, when I stop talking, you'll see it bouncing very low as it's very quietly picking up the hums of my fans. So by turning this on, it means that those very, very low noises are not being picked up. So to set this one, what you want to do is you just want to talk and see where that mic signal is bouncing up to. Mine's bouncing up in around that 15 to 20 range. So if you go into the settings here, click on the noise gate, you want to set the open threshold loosely just a bit below that, just so it's catching all of your quiet speech. And then the close threshold, you want to put even lower than that so it doesn't catch you trailing off. You can leave these sliders where they are, but you can look into this if you want to fine tune it a bit more. The next thing that I wanted to add in was a compressor. And the reason I want to add this in is because as a streamer, you get animated sometimes. And what it does is it brings the loudest parts of your voice and the quietest parts of your voice closer together so that your mic signal isn't jumping around in terms of volume all over the place, and it's a bit less jarring for the viewer. So to set this one, what I did, turned the compressor on. You'll probably hear a slight difference already. And here in the settings, I've got the threshold at about -25. So the way I found that was by talking normally. I saw that my mic signal was bouncing around that -15 to -20 decibels range, so I set it slightly below that, but it would pull up the quieter parts of my voice. Now with the ratio here, I left it at about 3:1, and the output gain I put somewhere between the range of 3 and 5. Play around with this to see which one sounds best to you. That output gain is essentially just going to bring up those quieter moments to more normalized audio levels without the loud parts getting way too loud. And the rest of those sliders, honestly, you can leave alone. The attack and release just means how quickly it comes in and how quickly it goes away, essentially. But that's for another time. Now, something else here that's optional, you don't have to do this, but I like to do it with the microphones that I tend to use. I add in a second compressor, and this one is going to be a limiter. And essentially what a limiter does is the very, very, very loud parts of your voice, it's just going to pull those ones down. So what I've done here is I've set the open threshold to -6 decibels of gains, because again, if you look at me talking over here, realistically, I shouldn't be going above that sort of -10 range, as it's going to get in the red there and it's going to start sounding like it might clip or peak a little bit. So I've set it at -6. If my volume is getting to that -6, I put the output gain to -2 decibels so that it brings it down just a little bit. Because if you're screaming at your teammates or playing horror games, you're going to get a bit loud sometimes. And the final thing that I did to this mic, although I don't think it's necessary, I think it again sounds pretty good out of the box, but what I wanted to do is, because I'm using some noise suppression here and there are certain parts of my voice that I don't like personally, I added in some very light EQ. So here I went with the Reaper plugins, but you can use whatever plugins that you want to, and I'm just using the Rear EQ plugin here. So if I turn this on, you'll immediately hear a difference in my voice. If I open the plugin interface, you can see that I've done a few things here. At the 50 hertz frequency range here, I've just added a high pass so that it doesn't catch those very low hums that you might see from like an AC or a fan or something like that. I know we got the noise suppression on, but I wanted to add this in as well. The next one that I did is a very light boost to that bassier range, sort of around that 90 to 100 hertz range, just for a little bit of added punch and oomph to the lower ends. I then decided to take out a tiny little bit of those mids at that 400 range frequency, just because my voice can be quite muddy sometimes. I do have a nasally voice, so what I then did is I took quite a bit out of that nasally 1000 hertz range, and finally, just to add a bit more kind of quality towards the high end side of things, because we have taken some of it out with the noise suppression, is I've got a high shelf, tiny bit of gain at the 5000 hertz range. Again, if this looks really, really complicated to you guys, don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be complicated. Essentially, the way that I look at EQ is if you just grab a band, you crank that gain up and you scroll it through until you find something you either like or you don't like about your voice. If you don't like that range, you can pull a little bit out. If you do like that range, typically say in the bassier range, you can add a little bit of that back in. And again, play around with these until it starts to sound good to you. Now, I was using this microphone in secret for the first couple of days of my first stream, and it wasn't until I pointed it out to my teammates and my viewers that I wasn't using my $300 microphone that they even realized. And that's some pretty high praise if you ask me. And whilst I'm already very impressed for a 50 to 60 pound microphone, there's a couple of features that this thing has that sets it pretty far ahead from other starter microphones. Now, it's fairly typical for a content creator to start with a USB microphone because they are much easier to use, they tend to be much cheaper, it's plug and play, and they just get the job done, right? Then as you grow, you might want to get yourself an XLR microphone for some better audio quality and more control with something like an audio mixer. But this upgrade is usually fairly costly because you have to buy that mixer and a brand new microphone, discarding the last one. But the really cool thing about the AM8 is that it does both, which means it's a microphone that can grow with you and sound even better over time, which is a really cool concept if you ask me. Obviously, you still need to buy a new mixer as well, but it means that you don't have to buy a new microphone too. And what's even cooler is you can do both XLR and USB at the same time. So as an example, if you wanted to send your higher quality XLR signal to your streaming PC and you wanted to use the USB signal for your PC or PlayStation that you're playing games on, you can do that. And that really simplifies a 2 PC setup, which is a godsend for so many people. Now, one thing that could be seen as both a positive or a negative, depending on your standpoint for this microphone, is it doesn't come with its own audio adjustment software for things like EQ or separating out your audio in terms of your microphone, your game, music, etc. So as an example, the $90 starter microphone from Elgato comes with the Wavelink software, which is such an incredible piece of kit, especially for a content creator. So it's kind of a bummer that there isn't a Fifine equivalent. But what that does mean is the hardware is as impressive as possible, getting as much as possible for as little cost as possible. And for that 50 to 60 pound price range, I can't think of a microphone I'd recommend more to somebody starting out right now. The audio quality is great, and the opportunity to save some money in the long run is kind of too hard to ignore. So for me, this is genuinely a top contender when it comes to recommending a starter microphone to somebody who wants the best bang for their buck. This whole video was actually recorded using this mic, and if you thought it sounded good and want to get your hands on one, I'm actually giving this exact microphone away. Plus, I will be giving links to the UK and US Amazon stores for Fifine in the description below. For a chance to win this one though, check the link in the description to enter the giveaway. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and sub, I'd really appreciate it. And if you like this kind of review style content, let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments below. But that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Take care out there and much love.